What is up, Gorilla Nation? It is Relentless here, bringing you yet another Division 2 video. And a lot of people have asked, and also I see a lot of people commenting on social media as far as how to counter the three main things that you see in the Dark Zone. And that is why it is more or less how I view it as paper, rock, scissors. You know, to most things, and you can even go back to Division 1, that pretty much everything had a counter. So, I mean, I know things are annoying, like the shock turret back then was completely annoying, and people running, you know, the final measure and giving their teammates buffs for what grenades were thrown at them. You know, there's counters to that as well. So, this is what I wanted to bring to you today. So, I know the most annoying build right now going on in the Dark Zone would have to be the monstrosity, but a lot of fun, the three-piece Negotiator's Dilemma. Now, some people is like, oh, it takes absolutely no skill just to fire a grenade from your ass. Well, the same argument could be said that you know, dropping a secret mine and doing the same thing, or dropping a hive and doing the same thing. And really, it can be annoying, but there's no sense in really complaining about it because there are counters to that as well as to other things. So basically, just like I had pretty much told you in the build video when I first did Negotiator's Dilemma, how to counter it. And as you all know, and if you run with it, that basically if someone gets all up in your face and takes your armor off, then you basically, your grenade that fires from your butt really does hit the enemy, but also that close, it pretty much kills you yourself. You become your own worst enemy. You become pretty much a suicide bomber. I mean, that's basically what it comes into. So that is one main way to really tick them off, just, you know, getting all up in their face and making them pretty much blow up themselves. And to kind of keep you from blowing up, there's tons of mods out there that just the smallest percentage of explosive resistance can pretty much decide whether that grenade finishes you off, completely, you know, downs you, or just weakens you. And the more explosive resistance you have, the less you'll be affected by it. So that is, you know, just a heads up. And there are two-piece negotiators, gives you 30% explosive resistance, and then you can still stack on mods. I have quite a few that have 5% explosive resistance, so I don't even need the two-piece negotiators. All I have to do is just slap on 4 or 5 of those, because I bought quite a few, and I have, you know, 25-30% just in mods. So that is one thing that I figured I would tell you. You don't necessarily have to spec into or destroy a build in order just to counter something, but just as in all RPGs and MMOs like The Division, with every single build, every, you know, I guess, great force, there's an opposite and equal, you know, push back of it. In this case, we're talking about counters. So you just may have to tweak something here or there, but that's where it becomes paper, rock, scissors in the Dark Zone, because you don't necessarily know what somebody else is running unless you're going to walk up to every single player that you come across in the Dark Zone and look at their build before you decide to flag. And by the time that you're looking at their build, they've already flagged and downed you. So that is the main thing, so keep that in mind. Always be prepared, or have a backup. You know, if you're running one consistent build, let's take the Berserk clutch build, and that is another form of, you know, one of the main three that you see in the Dark Zone: Negotiators, and of course Berserk clutch. Now, how do you defeat Berserk clutch? Well, it's just like anything. They are more or less a health-based build. The only time they're not really a health-based build is if you throw in a shotgun in the mix. Because with the high damage of a shotgun, you don't necessarily need the whole benefit of a full proc of Berserk. Just half of it is going to give you 20% damage, but heck, even 20% of your armor, a quarter of your armor being taken off, that's an extra 10%, and if they already have a shotgun that's 300k, then that 10% is going to be a much greater portion than just 10% that you would get on an AR or an SMG or an LMG. So that's the only differences when it comes to more or less the Berserk way. It's mostly a health build, but when it comes to things like the shotgun, then that's where it kind of differs a little bit, and most people would just want to be as tanky as possible and still be able to run the shotgun, just armor over health, versus the normal variety where you just want health over armor. But how you counter that? Since it's health based, then it has its weaknesses. And I've said this in Berserk build videos that I have actually done also. And the way to counter the Berserk clutch is status effects and also stagger. And what staggers agents the most? Some type of explosive, whether it be grenades, seeker mines, the bombardier drone, their mortar turret, things of this nature, because if they can't shoot, then they can't crit. If they can't crit, they can't self-heal. So therefore, that is their enemy. Now, the only counter to that counter, I guess I should throw that in there, is let's say that, you make a little hybrid and you try to weaken them and then send out your seeker. Well, since they have basically no armor on whatsoever, then you're just going to crack their armor. And if they're smart enough to actually run cloaked, then your seekers are going to be null and void, because as soon as their armor is popped, then it's going to disrupt all nearby players' skills. So if you're further enough away from that cloak, then you're good to go. But if you're in range within the 5 to 10 meters, then then you might have to dance around a little bit more until your seekers come back. So you always have to have those thoughts in the back of your mind. So that's why when I put out build videos, I always tell you guys and gals more or less to know the ins and outs of the build, know all its strengths, but definitely know its weaknesses too, so that way you can more or less kind of expect the expected. And what is the expected? Someone to counter whatever you're using. That's what makes Division so great, and that's why I consider it more or less paper, rocks, and scissors. Now when it comes to full skill builds, well, most full skill builds don't really have that much armor, because they pretty much spec everything into skills, or if they're using the BTSU gloves, then there is where the new technician comes in, to play, to where you have those things, those tools, those skills to disrupt skills. Just like the new exotic knee pads is another good example. So it's always good to have a backup plan, because you never know what particular builds you're going to run into in the Dark Zone. Sniper builds, I always see the counter. Well, they can't more or less either self-heal from when they're getting one tapped by a sniper, or I'm far enough away when I'm sniping that grenade can't get me. Well, just forewarn you, that grenade can go a couple blocks. Just so you know, if it's got clear line of sight, that grenade being shot from negotiators can go a couple blocks. Just a heads up. But you would be correct, but there is a counter to snipers as well. Because if you're a full-blown sniper build, then you're pretty much going to be a glass cannon, and you're pretty much expected to be sitting off far back away from really the heart of the firefight, so to speak. So you're just there to lend your support, just like the Deadeye build from Division 1. So you're not expected to run and gun and to be up in somebody's face. You're there to two-tap folks from a distance. So the one way to counter that is to use cover to cover runs, especially when utilizing those new knee pads, works out really well. Getting close and personal, and then if they have two sniper rifles on, they're gonna have scopes on them, especially on console. And if they're not really good at quick scoping the whole L2, R2 simultaneously, pretty much the same thing as how you would do a shotgun. But if they can't land their shots, then you're golden. That's how you counter the marksman rifle builds. So if you really put your mind to it, there are counters to every single thing. Sure, some things are more annoying than others, but just because they're annoying doesn't necessarily mean that others should be, wanting them just completely taken out of the game just because they're annoying. Or just because you might have to put a little extra thought into it and spec into it a different way to counter it. But case in point, you have your main build that you run in the DZ. Well, have a backup plan. If you come across something that's going to counter you, then you need to have a backup build to switch to or to go to, so when you go back to, rejoin that fight, then you know how to counter what they're trying to counter. So it's kind of like a little chess match, paper, rock, scissors. So there's always that's going to be something that counters the other thing, or there's something that's going to be better, but only until, you know, something else comes into play that's even better than that. But no one build right now you can say is, you know, king or god, because everything has its counter. So personal opinion, I think, you know, everything's a lot of fun, and, you know, some things can be annoying, but that's, you know, part of the Division world. And, you know, I'm just still playing and learning the ins and outs of what people like to run, and I personally like to counter whatever, you know, I encounter in the Dark Zone. I mean, that's part of, you know, being able to think on the fly, and I'm quite enjoying it. Sure, there's still, you know, it has its faults, but in the overall big picture of things, it was a good step in the right direction. So I hope this has been informative. I hope I didn't ramble on too much or confuse any of you, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Appreciate all the love and support. We'll see you guys.